He contributes in other ways. Not everyone can be a financial success. My wife said those words at her mother's dining table while her brother Jeffrey smirked into his wine glass. She said them kindly, you understand. Protectively even. Like she was defending me from the jackal circling. But what she was really saying, what everyone at that table heard, was that I was lucky to have her. That she'd married down. That I was the charity project who'd landed the heiress. My name is Davison Philip. I'm 42 years old, and I've been letting people underestimate me my entire adult life. But I should start at the beginning, 6 months before that dinner, when I first met the woman who would become my wife. The charity auction was one of those glittering affairs where old money pretends to care about new causes. I attended every year, not because I enjoyed them but because my estate donated the wine. Thornawood Estate, where I'd worked for 20 years, produced some of the finest vintages in the region. That particular evening, our 1999 reserve was up for bid, the first bottling from the year my father died and left me everything. She caught my attention immediately. Ella Whitmore stood near the front, champagne flute in hand, wearing confidence like a second skin. When the auctioneer presented the Thornawood bottle, I watched her paddle rise with casual certainty. $12,000. The auctioneer's gavel was halfway down when I spoke from the back of the room. 15,000. Heads turned. Ella's eyes found mine across the crowd, irritation flickering across her face. She couldn't see me clearly in the dim lighting, couldn't see the quiet amusement in my expression. To her, I was just some man in a simple suit interfering with her purchase. When the gavel fell and the bottle was mine, I made my way to the collection table. Ella was already there, and up close she was even more striking. That was my bottle, she said, but she was smiling now, curious. It's from my vineyard's first vintage, I replied, signing the payment slip. $15,000, pocket change from the estate's monthly revenue, though she couldn't know that. I couldn't let it go to someone who wouldn't appreciate it. Your vineyard? Her eyebrow arched. You work at Thornawood? I take care of it like it's my own. The truth hiding in plain sight. I'd been doing this dance for 25 years, ever since I inherited the estate at 17. Let people assume. Let them underestimate. My father had died being dismissed as just an estate manager, and I'd learned from his mistakes. I'd be humble, yes, but I wouldn't be invisible. As we talked, my phone buzzed against my jacket. The screen lit up briefly. Estate revenue report. $347,829 this month, before I tilted it away. Ella noticed the movement, her eyes sharp, but I smoothly transitioned into asking about her work. She told me about her development company, her projects, her ambitions. She talked about buildings and land values and profit margins, and I listened carefully to every word. What she didn't know, what no one in that room knew except my lawyer, was that I was likely the wealthiest person in attendance. Thornawood Estate was worth over $120 million, generating millions annually in passive income. But I lived in a cottage on the grounds, drove a modest car, and let the world think I was just the help. 3 weeks after the auction, I invited Ella to my cottage for dinner. She arrived in her Mercedes, clearly curious about where the estate worker lived. I watched her face as she approached. The cottage was a beautifully restored 19th-century stone structure with climbing roses and original leaded windows. Not what she'd expected. It comes with the job, I explained, opening the door. Inside, antique furniture filled the rooms, pieces I'd collected over the years. On my desk sat documents bearing the Thornawood seal, financial reports, investment portfolios. She glanced at them and I could see her assumption forming. I was studying estate management, filing papers for my employer. The truth sat right in front of her and she couldn't see it. While I prepared dinner, my phone rang. I stepped onto the porch, but my voice carried. Tell them the owner isn't interested in selling. I don't care what they're offering. The estate isn't for sale. When I returned, Ella was examining a framed photograph on the mantel, 17-year-old me standing in front of Thornawood Manor with my father. The caption read, New Beginnings, 1999. Who's this? She asked. My father. He managed the estate before me. Not a lie. Just not the whole truth. That night we talked for hours. She told me about growing up privileged, losing everything at 12 when her father's business partner embezzled their fortune. We went from a mansion to a 2-bedroom apartment in 6 months, she said softly. My mother never recovered. She trusted completely, never asked questions, and it destroyed her. I understood then, her need for control wasn't cruelty. It was survival. But I filed the information away, wondering if she'd ever trust me enough to let go of that fear. As she left that night, she kissed me by the door. "You're different from other men I've dated," she said. "You're content. You don't want anything from me." I smiled against her lips. "I have everything I need." If only she knew. 6 months later, I proposed by the estate lake at sunset. Ella said yes immediately, throwing her arms around my neck, laughing and crying at once. For one perfect moment, everything was simple. Then she pulled back, her face suddenly serious. "I love you so much," she began, and I felt the shift coming. "And because I love you, I need us to be smart. My family's been destroyed by divorce. I have a trust fund, company shares worth $8 million. I need to protect what's mine. You understand, right?" Something cold settled in my chest. "You think I want your money?" "No. God, no. But my lawyer says everyone needs one. It protects both of us." I turned to look at the sprawling estate behind us. My estate, my inheritance, my birthright, and felt the bitter irony wash over me. 8 years ago, another woman had loved me until she discovered my wealth. Victoria had seen the financial documents, and within hours she'd transformed from genuine to grasping. "I knew you had family money," she'd said, eyes glittering with greed. When I ended it, she sold her story to gossip blogs, and I'd spent 6 months being hunted by gold diggers. That's when I decided. The next woman I loved would love me as nobody. Only then would I know it was real. And now Ella, wonderful, ambitious, terrified Ella, was demanding a prenup to protect her $8 million from my $127 million. The universe was giving me exactly what I needed. If she thought I had nothing and still wanted legal protection, then her love was real. Wasn't it? "All right, Ella," I said quietly. "If that's what you need." She looked relieved, grateful even. She didn't see the darkness flickering in my eyes, the hurt mixing with grim satisfaction. Her lawyer drew up the prenup heavily in her favor, assuming I had little beyond my salary. I signed without objection. All assets owned before marriage remained separate property. She was protecting herself from me. Meanwhile, I owned everything. Jeffrey's toast cut through the reception like a blade wrapped in velvet. To my little sister Ella, who's always had a gift for finding hidden potential in things. Old buildings no one wants, neglected properties, and now Davison. Laughter rippled through the crowd. We're just relieved someone's finally giving Ella a reason to slow down. She's been so busy building empires, she needed someone who could just appreciate her. I sat perfectly still, feeling Ella's hand squeeze mine under the table. "Ignore him," she whispered. "He's drunk." But she was laughing too, just a little. Not defending me. Just managing the situation. Jeffrey had failed spectacularly in business 3 years ago, losing millions of family money while Ella built her empire. His jealousy had curdled into something toxic, and I was his outlet. But I said nothing. I smiled. I played my role. During the reception, an elderly man approached. "Young man, you look so much like Henry Phillip. Any relation?" My chest tightened. He was my father. The man's eyes widened. "Then you're just the estate manager now," I interrupted. "Excuse me." Ella overheard only the last part. Later, she told her mother how humble I was, how content with my simple life. Caroline had patted her daughter's hand and said, "You chose well. A man who doesn't need your money is rare." They had no idea I was the wealthiest person at my own wedding. The penthouse was Ella's domain, all glass and steel and modern minimalism. I moved my belongings in, and within a week they started disappearing. My books were reorganized. My vintage reading chair, my grandfather's chair, the one he'd sat in every evening reading to me as a child, was gone. "Where's my chair?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Oh, I donated it. The designer said it didn't fit the aesthetic." She gestured to a sleek replacement. "This is so much better. Cost $8,000. That chair was my grandfather's." Her face fell. "Was it? You never said." "I'm sorry, but honey, it was falling apart. This is an upgrade." That night, I lay awake beside her. When she finally slept, I opened my laptop and stared at my financial dashboard. Thornawood Holdings, $127,345,982. Rental income this month, $347,000. Investment returns, $892,000. I looked at the numbers, then at Ella sleeping peacefully, secure in the knowledge that she was taking care of her poor husband. I thought of my mother Sarah, who'd left when I was 17. After my father died and the will revealed he'd left everything to me, she'd been furious. "He gave you everything?" she'd hissed. I was his wife. But my father had seen what I'd been too young to understand. Sarah had grown to love the money more than the man. She'd wanted him to flaunt his wealth, to live large, to give her the lifestyle she craved. When he refused, staying humble and generous and private, she'd grown cold. His final letter to me had been clear: money reveals character. Protect this legacy. Never let money define you, but never let anyone make you ashamed of what you've built. I'd honored that for 25 years. But watching Ella sleep, I wondered, had I taken it too far? Ella burst through the penthouse door like a storm of excitement. Baby. Huge news. We found the perfect development site, Thornawood Estate. My blood went cold. She spread architectural renderings across our table and I forced myself to look. My grandfather's manor, the home where my father died in my arms, gutted and converted to a luxury hotel. The vineyard where I'd scattered my father's ashes, bulldozed for a parking structure. The cottage where my parents had fallen in love, demolished for a spa facility. We'll build 40 luxury estates, a golf course, full resort amenities. The project's worth $200 million at completion. Her eyes were bright with ambition, completely missing the fact that she was planning to destroy my entire inheritance. It's where you work, I know, she continued, but think of the opportunity. Maybe they'll keep you on during transition. And if not, I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. Those words echoed in my skull. I gripped the table edge, knuckles white. Have you contacted the owner? My voice came out quieter than intended. That's the problem. Total recluse. Won't respond to anyone. So frustrating. Maybe he doesn't want to sell. Everyone has a price, Davison. I walked to the window, seeing my reflection in the glass. I looked like my father in his final years, quiet, enduring, slowly disappearing while everyone around him made assumptions. He died with people thinking he was just an employee. The newspaper obituary had read, Estate Manager Henry Phillip, 52. Not owner. Manager. I'd found him in his study, clutching his chest, paramedics arriving too late. Don't let them forget, he'd whispered. Don't let them make you invisible. For 25 years I'd been invisible by choice. But standing there, watching Ella plan to destroy everything my family built, I realized, invisibility and dignity were not the same thing. Sunday dinner at Caroline's estate was torture masked as family bonding. Jeffrey, 3 drinks deep, leaned back in his chair. So Davison still managing the estate? No interest in a real career. Jeffrey, Ella started. I'm just asking. My sister's a powerhouse. Aren't you embarrassed? Living in her penthouse, driving her extra car, attending events on her dime. The table went silent. I carefully set down my fork, years of restraint keeping my hand steady. Caroline jumped in, trying to smooth things. Davison contributes in other ways. Not everyone measures success in dollars. Exactly, Ella added quickly. He's the most grounded person I know. He keeps me humble. There it was. The words that would echo in my mind for weeks. He keeps me humble. Like I was a pet project. A reminder of what really mattered. The estate worker who made the heiress feel good about herself. Jeffrey snorted. He keeps you humble? Ella, I stood. My chair scraped against hardwood. What, Jeffrey? Say it. The room froze. Quiet Davison, patient Davison, had a presence now that made everyone uncomfortable. Jeffrey's face paled slightly. I was going to say estate employee. I see. I looked at Ella. And you? Is that how you see me? Someone who needs you to be humble? Someone you're taking care of? Davison, that's not. She reached for my hand. Thornawood Estate. Your company wants to develop it. I'll arrange a meeting with the owner. Tuesday, 10 a.m. Jeffrey blinked. You can do that? I smiled without warmth. I can do that. As I walked out, my hands shook on the steering wheel. My father had endured this kind of disrespect his entire life. Too humble to correct people, too dignified to flaunt wealth. It had killed him slowly, the constant dismissal, the casual contempt. He died thinking humility was virtue. But I knew better. Humility without respect was just submission. Thomas Rothwell had been my father's lawyer and became mine when I inherited everything at 17. Now 68, he slid the documents across his mahogany desk with a knowing look. Current valuation, $127.3 million. The vineyard alone is worth $34 million after that international award. Your rental properties generated $347,000 last month. Your stock portfolio has grown by 12% this year. He paused. When are you going to tell her? Tuesday. Thomas pulled out the prenup, read it, and started laughing. She protected her $8 million from your $127 million. That's beautiful. Poetic even. She insisted on it. So technically she has zero claim to Thornawood, your rental income, your investments, or your inheritance. If you divorced tomorrow, she'd walk away with exactly what she brought in. He leaned forward. Davison, are you prepared for what happens when she realizes what she's done? The humiliation? The guilt? I stared out the window toward Thornawood in the distance. My father had renovated the cottage 2 years before he died, restoring it exactly as it had been when he and my mother were poor and happy. I'd found his journal there. Money showed me who Sarah really was. This cottage remembers who we could have been. Whoever inherits this estate, I hope they find someone who loves them here before they know what else there is. I'd brought Ella to the cottage first. A test she didn't know she was taking. And she'd failed over and over, every time she paid for dinner with a pitying smile, every time she made decisions without me, every time she treated our marriage like charity. What happens next is up to her, I told Thomas. I found Ella in the penthouse living room, staring at her laptop. She looked up when I entered, tension in her shoulders. You've been avoiding me since Sunday. I've been thinking. I sat across from her, formal distance between us. About what Jeffrey said. He's an idiot. I don't think. I've arranged a meeting with Thornawood's owner. Tuesday, 10 a.m. Your company can make their pitch. She froze, laptop forgotten. What? Oh. We've been trying for 8 months. I asked him. He said yes. You know him? Is he a friend? I looked at her, really looked at her, seeing both the woman I loved and the woman who'd spent 6 months subtly diminishing me. You could say we're very close. He's agreed to hear your proposal. Bring Jeffrey, bring your whole team. Davison, this is incredible. How did you? But Ella. My voice dropped. After this meeting, everything changes between us. One way or another. What does that mean? I handed her an address card. Thornawood Manor, East Wing Study. Be on time. After she left the room, I sat alone in the darkness, thinking about my father's heart attack. He'd been working at his desk, managing the estate when it struck. By the time I found him, he could barely speak. Don't let them forget, he'd whispered. Don't let them make you invisible. I'd been 17, terrified, helpless. The paramedics arrived too late. My father died in my arms in that study, and 3 days later, the will reading revealed he'd left everything to me. My mother had been furious. She'd expected to inherit, to finally have the control and access to wealth she'd craved. When she realized a teenage boy now controlled everything, she left within a month. I'd managed the estate ever since, honoring my father's humble approach but learning from his mistakes. He'd let people disrespect him. I wouldn't. Tuesday would be reckoning day. The Thornawood Manor study was exactly as my father had left it. Oak paneling, leather chairs, the massive desk where he'd died. Ella, Jeffrey, and their development team sat with presentation folders, rehearsed pitches ready. Jeffrey was confident, already spending imaginary commissions. This is going to be huge, he whispered to Ella. If we land this. The door opened. I walked in, but instead of sitting with them, I moved behind the desk. My father's desk. The owner's desk. And I sat down. Ella laughed nervously. Davison? What are you doing? The owner will. I'm here. I folded my hands. I'm ready for your presentation. Silence crashed through the room. Then Jeffrey, what is this? Some kind of joke. Thomas Rothwell entered, setting a folder before me. The deed, sir, as requested. I slid it across to Ella. Her hands trembled as she opened it. I watched her face drain of color as she read. Property deed, Thornawood estate owner. Davison Henry Phillip inherited. June 15, 1999 current valuation. $127,300,000. This is fake. Jeffrey grabbed the deed. This is. It's not. Thomas's voice was professional ice. Mr. Phillip has owned Thornawood for 25 years. He inherited it at 17 from his father, Henry Phillip, who built this estate into one of the most profitable properties in the state. Ella couldn't breathe. I watched her relive every memory, every condescending comment, every time she'd paid for dinner, every decision made without me, the prenup, God, the prenup she'd forced me to sign. You. Her voice broke. You let me? I never lied, I said quietly. Not once. Everyone made assumptions. That I was poor. That I needed your money. That I was lucky to marry you. I looked at Jeffrey. That I was living off her dime. Jeffrey's face went red. You lying piece of. Careful. I stood. I never lied. I said I took care of Thornawood like it was my own. It is. I said the wine was from my vineyard. It is. Every word I spoke was truth. You just heard what you wanted to hear. Ella sat frozen while Jeffrey continued sputtering. The development team looked anywhere but at me. But Ella was somewhere between tears and hysterical laughter. I made you sign a prenup. Her voice was hollow. I made you sign a prenup to protect my $8 million from your $127 million. Yes, you did. Oh my God. She covered her face. Every time I paid for dinner. Every time I bought you clothes because I thought you couldn't afford nice things. The penthouse. I redecorated your home. I threw away your grandfather's chair, and replaced it with an $8,000 monstrosity because I thought I was helping you. I remember. Jeffrey found his voice, ugly with embarrassment. You son of a bitch. You manipulated her. You played some sick game. I loved her. My voice cut through the room like a blade. I loved her enough to want her to love me for me. Not my bank account. Not my property. Me. I looked at Ella. And for 6 months I thought you did. The room held its breath. Then you insisted on that prenup. To protect your money from me? Do you understand how that felt? You loved me but you didn't trust me. You loved me but you needed legal insurance. Meanwhile, I was sitting on a fortune I never mentioned because I wanted you to love the man, not the manner. Ella was crying now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. I did love you. I do. You loved who you thought I was. The humble estate worker you could improve. The project you could take care of. The man who kept you humble. I pushed the development proposal back across the desk. I'm declining your offer. Thornawood isn't for sale. It never was and it never will be. I walked toward the door then stopped. The cottage on the east grounds where I live, it's yours if you want it. No prenup required. No conditions. Just partnership. Equality. I paused. But I won't live in that penthouse anymore. I won't be your kept man. I won't be my father, dying while everyone thinks he's just the help. The door closed behind me with finality. Behind it, I heard Ella's quiet sobbing and Jeffrey's stunned silence. I'd spent 25 years being underestimated. Not anymore. 2 weeks passed. Ella stayed in the penthouse. I stayed at the cottage. On her dining table sat 2 sets of keys, both delivered by courier. Her penthouse keys. Control, independence, the life she'd built. Cottage keys with a note in my handwriting. If you want to rebuild this, we rebuild as equals. No saviors. No projects. Just partners. The cottage is yours. I'm here. D. Jeffrey had called repeatedly. He embarrassed you. Divorce him, take the high road. You don't need some manipulative. I don't need what, Jeffrey? His money? I never did. Ella's voice was ice. But maybe I need him. Maybe I need to stop being our mother. She drove to Thornawood as sunset painted the estate gold. The cottage lights were on. I was there waiting. She sat in her car for 10 minutes, gathering courage. Her mother had taught her to protect herself after the bankruptcy, after watching her father's business partner steal everything. Never trust a man with your money, Caroline had drilled into her. Never need him. Never be vulnerable. And Ella had learned perfectly. She'd protected herself right into isolation, building walls so high no one could climb them. But those walls hadn't protected her. They just kept her alone. Ella walked to the cottage door and knocked. I opened it, looking tired, uncertain. For the first time since our wedding, we were on equal ground. I threw away your grandfather's chair, she said, voice cracking. I know. I made you sign a prenup. I know. I let Jeffrey humiliate you. I let my whole family treat you like you were beneath us, like you were lucky to have me. I know. I'm so sorry. Davison, I'm so. I pulled her inside, held her while she cried against my chest. I don't want apologies, Ella. I want a partner. Can you be that? Can you unlearn what your mother taught you? Can you stop protecting yourself from me? She pulled back, looking around the cottage with new eyes. The antiques weren't charming poverty, they were valuable choices. The simple kitchen wasn't lack, it was preference. This cottage was where my father had lived with my mother before money complicated everything, where they'd been poor and happy and in love. Your father lived here, she said softly, before he inherited. With my mother. When she loved him for him. And you brought me here to see if I would too. Yes. I failed. You failed a test you didn't know you were taking. But you're here now. You drove away from that penthouse and came to a cottage. That means something. She laughed through tears. The prenup. God, the prenup. I protected my $8 million from your $127 million. Your lawyer must have. He laughed for 10 minutes straight. I deserve that. She took my hands. I want to void it. The prenup. All of it. Combined assets. Full partnership. Legal and financial. I want to build something together, not side by side. Together. I cupped her face. You might end up with more than you started with. Or I might end up with what my mother was too afraid to have. A real marriage. We kissed in the doorway where my parents had once stood, where love had existed before money complicated it. Outside, Thornawood Estate sprawled in the distance. My grandfather's empire, my father's legacy. But we'd start here. In the small cottage. As equals. My phone rang. Thomas. Davison, we have a problem. Your mother just filed a lawsuit. She's contesting your inheritance, claiming she should have received the estate. She's bringing evidence that your father wasn't of sound mind. I looked at Ella. Looks like the next battle is family. She squared her shoulders, and for the first time since our wedding, I saw my true partner emerge. Then we fight it together. As equals. I smiled. As equals. The estate lights glowed in the distance, and somewhere in that manner, my father's spirit could finally rest. I'd honored his humility. But I'd also honored his final words. Don't let them make you invisible. Never again.